I think in life generally, and I think for me philosophically, if you're not expecting much, great things can happen. And for me, that holds true in terms of networking as well. I've joined a networking group, and I appreciate you are also a member of that group. So I'm happy to give it a shout out. So the YP Club.
Good old YP.
YP Club is a networking group that Sami and I actually met at. One of the first questions people ask is, what are you trying to get out of a networking group? I literally say nothing. I turn up to a networking event because I want to meet smart, interesting people. I love people's life stories. I love to understand what motivates people. I'm also one of those people that likes to be humble enough to not be braggalicious to say, listen, I've done this, I've done that. I might be doing something completely wrong. I might be missing a trick completely. And I think chatting to people is one of the best ways of sharing ideas, perspectives, etc. And I always say a line, a lot of my friends are going to smile when they hear this. Out of connecting with people, out of networking, only two things can happen. Either it can reinforce a belief that you have or something that you think, or you get an alternative view. Both things are great. So why would you not?
Hello there, my name is Sami, co-founder of Volt, and welcome to Masters of Wealth. Today I have a special guest, a friend of mine that we've met recently, Barot. Paras, I'll let you introduce yourself since you have a long...
Thanks, Sami. Appreciate you calling me on. Well, where shall I start? I'm a corporate professional. I sort of work in the strategy and planning world, starting my career sort of more in the execution-focused sort of space, working primarily with sort of financial services organizations, consulting organizations as well, and currently a resident of Dubai.
Very nice, very nice. So let's get started. So, tell us, who are you on a personal level?
Sure. Well, thanks so much. I'll start off right from the beginning, I suppose. I was born in London in the UK. My family's from India in terms of heritage. One thing slightly differently that we did, I moved to India when I was a teenager. So I studied in India for like 2 or 3 years or so. Really sort of understanding the culture, the geography, the people, the mindset. So it was a bit of a culture shock being there as a teenager, but something that my young brother and I look back upon quite fondly, actually. We built some great sort of friends there, and I think more importantly, sort of work ethic and sort of a different perspective of life. My family very successful, to be honest, in the medical and healthcare space. So I think the intent there was to have sort of more of a grounding, more of an experience in terms of, outside of the UK, outside of London. Yeah. I moved back to the UK, started my career at 18 years old. So I started working full-time at 18.
Okay, nice. No university?
No university. So I did things slightly differently.
Impressive.
I studied in the evenings.
Okay, wow.
So worked full-time in the daytime and studied in the evenings. So I did my bachelor's degree and then ultimately my master's degree as well. I was a bit of a geek when I was younger, so really into sort of my programming, technology, that side of things, taught myself some programming. But I quickly realized sort of business and that sort of things really sort of appealed to me more. And I sort of started thinking about different careers. And at the time, you don't really get told, what a business analyst does versus a project manager versus a corporate strategist, etc. And certainly I wasn't told, at least when I was 18. So the name of the game for me was just to really get as much skills and experience as possible. So I say fast forwarding my career, just really building out skills and experiences in different industries, technology, telecoms, etc. By the time I was 19, I was leading a team of 8 people, which is, really interesting and sort of a fascinating experience and sort of learning myself on the ground.
I'm sure those people were older than you, probably.
Yeah, a lot of, similar age, if not slightly older as well. Really just getting thrown into the deep end. I'm very much one of those people that likes to do stuff. Yeah. So I think there's no experience like doing it. So that's something that really resonated with me. I guess fast forwarding my career quickly, really working in the corporate strategy space, execution focused project management, business analysis, working at a consulting firm, etc. Really helped shape who I am. I've been very fortunate enough to be able to choose the places I wanted to work. So typically I'd have multiple offers on the table sort of even early in my career. So for me, the vibe of the organization, the manager that I was going to be working with, the team, the type of thing that I was going to be doing was very, very important to me. And I think it's been quite a fascinating journey for me. Sure. Fast forwarding quickly, so London's where I spent most of my career. I always had this aspiration of working at one of the best organizations in the world, which I still think it is, Goldman Sachs. That was like sort of my target. Yeah. Never thought I'd get there. But one step and after another. One day I got a call from a friend of mine who's was a headhunter recruiter from London, saying there's a role in London at Goldman Sachs. Do you want to think about it? I did, and ended up getting offered an opportunity there as a consultant, and really loved my time there.
And so what was your day to day there?
Yeah, so I was effectively working completely differently to what I was doing before. So sort of program managing large real estate programs for Goldman's.
Okay.
My first program was sort of a £110 million program, but effectively, when you think about things like real estate at a large organization, it's typically quite a sort of operations focused department or a division, and change doesn't happen that often. Certainly to the tune of tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, pounds. So because of my background in technology, change management, they wanted someone like me to come in to help add some governance. So yeah, absolutely fascinating role. And then towards the end of my time there, sort of getting more involved in sort of operations planning and sort of forward looking as well in terms of strategy. So that's kind of where I got my first flavor of strategy and sort of really enjoyed my time there. Once again, to be honest, I think your manager, your boss, your team, your colleagues make any organization for you. And for me, I was very blessed to work with, for me, the smartest people on the planet at an organization I absolutely loved. And yeah, that's kind of what I did in London.
Okay, amazing. And now you're in Dubai.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Yeah. So I was at Goldman till about 2016, 2017 or so. I always had this aspiration and inkling to sort of live, work abroad, experience life abroad. So I had a lot of choices on the table. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, where I wanted to be. And I think Canada quickly came to the top of the list. This was sort of 2015, 2016 or so.
Okay.
And look, America was an option, Singapore was an option, but I just thought Canada was like a really cool place to be. Yeah. When you go to a place and you're like on holiday and you're like, wouldn't it be amazing to live here? That's kind of what I felt about Toronto.
Okay.
So I started networking a bit, started exploring the idea. And 2017, I made the move, resigned from Goldman's, and I had no real plan in place really, apart from a generalist plan of I'll figure it out. I landed in Toronto. I got offered multiple jobs in my first week there. Ended up working at an amazing Canadian Big Five bank. And I was, in 2017, helping build the robotics, machine learning, and AI practices from scratch, effectively. And once again, building up the governance, et cetera, as well. So really making it up as we go along, blue sky thinking, what do we need to figure out? Let's figure it out. That's kind of what I did. And then fast forwarding quickly, I ended up working at a large reinsurance company, the world's largest, from Toronto, as a global head of strategy and planning in the technology division, which was an amazing dream role, being able to build teams, being able to organize, budgets and headcount and structures and people and processes, and really do this on a global level. It was unbelievable for me. Being able to travel back to London to see my family if I wanted to, obviously with work as well. Yeah. Going to other parts of Europe, Asia Pac, etc. as well, was really fascinating. I guess if you ask me about Dubai, look, I think COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people. To be honest, life was going spectacularly well. I was living in downtown Toronto, loved my life. But I think during COVID time, obviously not seeing family, not being able to travel, I think that's the time when I sort of was able to take a bit of a backseat view about life in general. I've always been very philosophical about life, but thinking about what do I really want to do? What am I trying to achieve? Where do I want to do it? And then more importantly, I'm always looking for where are the growth areas of the world, let's call it.
Sure.
And for me, the Middle East, Asia were two areas that just absolutely popped out. Yeah. Look, I'm lucky enough to be able to be nimble enough to take decisions, and I think that's a quality that I think is very pertinent to someone that wants to be successful. If you ask me honestly, not having this rigorous mindset. So therefore, I moved to Dubai on a bit of a sabbatical, to be honest. So I quit my role in Toronto, sold my apartment, and I moved to Dubai temporarily to network. I also wanted to do some side projects as well in terms of investing. So predominantly sort of angel investing was an area I really wanted to think about. I just never had the opportunity in my corporate career to do so.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I really thought about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for anyone who doesn't know what angel investing is, perhaps you can share, what does that mean?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So from my perspective, and look, I'm a bit of a newbie in this space, to be honest. Like I said, I'm a corporate guy, but I also like to have a multifaceted approach to finance, money, wealth, general sort of philosophy of life, etc. Yeah. So for me, angel investing is sort of investing in sort of ideas that have started formulating into something. I think that's kind of how I put it. Yeah. So they're typically very young companies. Yeah. They typically, hopefully, have a charismatic leader that is able to execute upon some of these ideas, typically at the cutting edge of industries or geographies. And I'll talk about that in a second in terms of my thinking around that. Yeah. But, you know, some of these guys and girls obviously would require capital to build upon that idea. And that's kind of what angel investing is all about, really helping support founders and startup entrepreneurs flesh out their ideas. And one thing I especially like about angel investing is it's not just about writing a check. And certainly from my perspective, it's not. Yeah. It's about sort of helping the founders, the organizations, the company, advising them, promoting them if that's required, that type of thing. Like I'm always someone that likes to learn. Yeah. So for me, I'm not better. I'm still learning, and I want to learn alongside smart people.
Yeah, that's that. And when you look at adding strategic value, where do you feel like you fit in well with early stage businesses? Is it more on people, strategy, markets? Where do you really fit in?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah. I think there's 2 or 3 areas that I really try to focus on. Yeah. Once again, not that I know better, so I think it's about sort of breaking down big ideas into bite-sized chunks. That's kind of what I do in my corporate life. Yeah. So that's an area that I really like to help. So I think every problem, and especially in the startup world, can seem like a big daunting problem. However, if you break it down into an action plan of things that we need to get done tactically, then it's manageable. Sure. Secondly, I've got this perspective of life from a geographical perspective, let's call it. Being born in London, living in India for a few years, living in North America, currently being in Dubai. I understand sort of markets, I understand culture, I understand perspective. So, just trying to see if I can help in any way to understand, I've seen this before. This type of application works quite well. This type of organization works quite well. And there's lots of examples of this, right? There's lots of business models that have transferred geographically, that have done exceptionally well in different geographies. Yeah. And sometimes an idea is to bring an idea to a specific geography and tweak it. Yeah. I think that's an amazing business model, if you ask me honestly. Yeah. So really helping in that side of things as well. Sure. Yeah.
And you especially see that in the UAE. I think a lot of businesses that need to be localized for the market to succeed, the Kareems, the Talabats, etc. So yeah, it's definitely a model that works in this region. You're part of the corporate world, but I know on a personal level, you're also very much involved in the angel investing. And
yes.
I'd love to understand, what is your long-term goals around this? Like, how do you go about managing your time, your money, your wealth, and take it from there?
Yeah, sure. No, great question. Yeah. Look, once again, I'm sort of figuring it out as I go along, to be honest. I'm very early to this world. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a mental challenge and a bit of a block sometimes for corporate professionals to enter into the non-corporate space. Like the corporate world, I sort of know it inside out now. I sort of know what I'm doing. I'm currently working at a large American insurance brokerage company here in Dubai, regionally heading up strategic programs, etc. So have I got stuff figured out from a corporate perspective? Yes.
And it's comfortable, right?
And it's comfortable, absolutely. Yeah. I sort of
challenging, but it comes with
absolutely. Very challenging, but also success and failure is defined quite well. Yeah. I know what ticks the corporate world in terms of like ticks, makes them tick, let's call it. Yeah. What's important, what's not, how things are working. Large organizations are typically, and they'll hate me for saying this, generally quite similar. And typically, they'd want to transfer cultures across, and you want to bring that type of culture to other organizations. And you're trying to strive to be the best, is what every organization says. Who is not trying to be the best? I mean, everyone's trying to be the best, of course. Yeah. To answer your question regarding sort of longer term plans, to be honest, I'm sort of figuring it out. I'm still seeing how it goes. I've joined an angel syndicate recently here in Dubai. So that's an avenue where I'm sort of using a syndicate to invest in various startup companies in the region.
Can we mention the name?
Yes, absolutely. So Angel Spark is a fantastic organization that I've recently joined. Yeah.
Can you tell us how Angel Spark works? Because
Yeah, absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
quite an
Sure.
interesting one, right?
Absolutely.
Quite unique.
It's a very unique organization.
Yeah.
Effectively, a bunch of friends that are extremely successful in the investment space
Sure.
got together, decided to start up an investment vehicle so they could co-invest together. Think about it as a Dragon's Den Shark Tank light equivalent.
Yeah.
There's a selection committee, so founders can send their applications and their pitch decks, to the organization. That gets vetted. Once they're vetted, a selection committee goes through the ones that are the most interesting. And typically we'd have sort of one-to-one chats with founders, behind the scenes effectively, if you want to call it that. And then 3 to 4 founders get invited to pitch live at an event once a month that Angel Spark hosts. What's fantastic about that event is you're in a room full of extremely smart, successful investors, entrepreneurs, corporate professionals, or whatever else you want to call them.
Yeah.
And in real times, you get lots of feedback. Obviously, it's quite a casual place. The founders then leave the room, and the investment committee stay in the room, and obviously guests can join as well to see how this all works. And there's a debate discussion that happens in real time, and we decide in real time whether to invest in the company or not. Of a fixed check amount at the moment, so $100,000 is the fixed check amount. Okay. But what you get is 2 things. Number one, you get all the angels that are in the room that might have an expertise or a passion for whatever you're doing to help you on your journey. Yeah. And then secondly, all members have an opportunity to then top up their investment with sort of minor amounts as well, if the cap table allows as well. Yeah. So that's been really fascinating for me. I've joined that quite recently. Brushing shoulders with extremely smart, successful people, just in itself, seeing how they think, just being in amongst amazing people is just fascinating for me. I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, I think a quick feedback loop helps the founder, right? That doesn't waste time waiting for feedback and due diligence. And I think it's a nice way to raise money as a startup.
Exactly.
So on top of that, so you've got the corporate life, the angel investing. How else are you spending your time and managing your wealth, right? And I know we talked about your family wealth and how your brother gets involved on one side and you're involved on the other. So we'd love to hear more about how that works. Yeah.
No, thanks so much, Sami. Look, once again, these are very sort of early stage ideas that we've had. My family and I are very close-knit, even from a financial perspective in terms of like investing and doing things as a sort of a pseudo family office. We haven't even set up a family office yet, but we're still thinking about whether that should be the right thing to do. My brother, he's a very senior exec at a large American bank, way more financially savvy than me, I must say, way more detailed than me. And I guess I'm more of the corporate sort of type of guy. So I think we work very well together. So this is where we are thinking and start talking about, opportunities together, whether that be in the public markets or private markets, to find great opportunity ideas and investment ideas. Yeah. That could be anything from startup companies to real estate to any other organization. That could even mean entrepreneurship in the future, which is something that we would potentially consider as well. On top of Angel Spark, we have done a bunch of private investments as well. And once again, this is all predominantly via networking. Mm-hmm. I just feel the power of networking has been immense, certainly since I've been to Dubai. So there's about 3 or 4 deals that we've just completed as a family together.
Yeah, amazing. And we talk about networking, especially in a country like UAE, and how important that is. Just really share with the audience what are the tips and tricks around it, and what are the successes you face, the challenges. How does one really become a good networker, right? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Just great question. I think for me, sometimes networking is a bit of a weird word, right? Mm. Because it's like you're trying to get something out of it. I think in life generally, and I think for me philosophically, I think if you're not expecting much, great things can happen. Yeah. And for me, that holds true in terms of networking as well. I've joined a networking group, and I appreciate you are also a member of that group. So we're happy to give it a shout out. So the YP Club is a networking.
Good old YP.
YP Club is a networking group that Sami and I actually met at. Yeah. Look, one of the first questions people ask is why? What are you trying to get out of a networking group? Sure. For me, it's about nothing. I literally say nothing. I turn up to a networking event because I want to meet smart, interesting people. I love people's life stories. I love to understand what motivates people. I'm also one of those people that likes to be humble enough to not be braggalicious to say, listen, I've done this, I've done that, I've worked here. I might be doing something completely wrong. I might be missing a trick completely. And I think chatting to people is one of the best ways of sharing ideas, perspectives, etc. And I always say a line, a lot of my friends are going to smile when they hear this. Out of connecting with people, out of networking, only two things can happen. Either it can reinforce a belief that you have or something that you think, or you get an alternative view. Mm-hmm. Both things are great. Yeah. So why would you not? Yeah. So that's kind of, my thinking around networking. I think Dubai is a very, very social place. Yeah. So one of the things I thought about before I moved to Dubai was, I don't just turn up to a place and start living there, like even Toronto, etc. I really like to understand the culture. And like my Torontonian friends will say, Paris is probably the most Canadian out of all of us because I really want to embrace myself. Look, Dubai's a small place. Yeah. It seems like everyone sort of knows each other and knows each other quite well. Yeah. That could be in the financial world, in the corporate world, in the investment world, in the entrepreneurial world, etc. I just think the smart thing to do is to, be in and amongst it. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't really complain that if things are not happening for you. You got to play the percentages. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know that you're involved, originally Indian descent, and I know you've been quite active now around the Indian market, whether it's on private investment, public. Talk me through that. How did that even happen, and how have you seen the growth there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, before I moved to Dubai, I was thinking about sort of one of the growth engines of the world at the moment and for the next decade or so. I firmly believe the Middle East and Asia, and specifically areas like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and India are future growth areas for the world. Yeah. The so what is the hard part. India's a bit of a tricky place. I know there's a meme on social media which says something along the lines of India is not for beginners. I totally agree with that. For me, I have this unique perspective where I've actually lived in India as well, being a British person. So, and obviously, I go there very regularly, so I know it quite well in terms of the mindset and the culture as well. There are areas that I think India needs to improve on from a, capital appreciation, growth, investment perspective and attracting foreign investment, which I think the Middle East has done exceptionally well. Making it easy for foreigners to invest in India. That's an area where I think they really need to focus on and not have a bunch of bureaucracy. Hopefully they improve on that over the next sort of decade or so. But globally, macro level speaking wise, is the middle class of India growing at an exponential rate? Yes. I think I saw a stat the other day after the BRICS summit talking about the fact that India is going to be one of the fastest growing large economies of the world, if not the largest. Yeah. I can totally see it with my own eyes. Yeah. I'm from the Indian state of Gujarat, which is where the Prime Minister is from. So he really tries to develop it as fast as possible. And, he's got sort of quite a, tight control over it positively in terms of trying to make sure it's his, little baby that's doing quite well. Yeah. Every time I go there, I'm shocked, positively shocked at how amazing things are developing. And then another thing I'd say as well is, I talk about this in my sort of corporate life, but also my networking or entrepreneurial life or whatever it may be. I call it hardwiring versus softwiring. It's okay to build bridges and buildings and hospitals and infrastructure. That's one thing that's very important. But the softwiring about building out culture as well, which I think the Middle East has done once again exceptionally well, is massively important. Yeah. So I think I see a lot of that happening in India as well. And then the so what for me, are there amazing startup companies in India? Absolutely. Yeah. Are there innovative ideas in India where people are just throwing, lots of ideas together and trying to make something happen? I mean, there's 1 billion people. You're for sure going to get some amazing ideas. Sure. Back to our point about different business models and implementing them in a country like India, absolutely. And then the final thing I'll say is look, India's so vast, even culturally, it's like a bunch of, so many states that are quite unique and distinct in their own way as well. Yeah. So some business models might be sort of tailored to different states, for example. There may be business models that wouldn't work in another state of India. So I kind of think of it as like they call it a subcontinent effectively, which is kind of literally what it is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the talent you get in India, especially in the technology side, right? It's the Microsofts, the Apples are all hiring from there. So I think the change now of why not localize businesses there rather than sending that talent outside, right? So yeah, I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be blunt, do I think there are areas where things need to be polished and enhanced? Absolutely. So I think the mentality of this will do is quite prevalent in India. When I think places like China have actually understood what the global markets want and the global what the business markets want. And for them, it's like quality is everything.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Apple started producing their devices in China rather than India, because China were like, we will do whatever specification you require and make it happen.
Yeah.
Whereas I thought India is a little bit more lackadaisical and certainly has been. But I think a lot of this is changing as well, positively. So, yeah,
definitely. So, you talk about, we'll go back to your family wealth or in your personal wealth. And I know that your brother is the one that handles public markets, but in the absence of your brother,
yes.
How do you look at investing in public markets? Do you rely on banks to give advice? Do you, have you traded on your own before? Talk me through that experience.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So for me, I think I'm curious about the public markets. I love macroeconomics. I love macro sort of level politics as well. So I'm definitely one of those like trend identifier type people. I don't go through like massive amounts of detail and balance sheets and this and that. Do I listen to earnings calls and stuff like that? Absolutely. But for me, it's about trends. Like, I know this sounds very sort of millennial, maybe.
Sure.
If everyone's wearing white AirPods in 2004, you should probably buy whatever company's selling these white earbuds.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was called Apple, and it was like I just saw the trends type of thing.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of what I believe in generally.
Yeah.
In terms of like formulating a thesis and an approach to things, I don't really rely on a specific person per se, to be blunt.
Yeah.
I don't think about, I get validation is probably the right way of putting it.
Yeah.
Back to the point about networking, back to the point about working in incredible places. Hopefully a lot of my friends that hear this will smile, because I would like to verify things that I think. And one thing I love about networking, and I go to London, have dinner with my friends who are obviously ex-Goldman Sachs now, but doing exceptionally well in their lives. But I want to have dinner with them because I want to share ideas. And it's not just about the food and how's your family, but it's like, guys, what do you think about X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C? And we'll have a debate, a discussion about it, which for me is like absolutely invaluable. Yeah. But once again, you got to put yourself out there. You got to make an effort to make it happen.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in like a single person is going to tell me exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But I like for pointers and directions, really.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, a lot of clients, the first question they ask is, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
What are others doing? And I think there's always this human instinct to not necessarily seek guidance, but feel comfort around, others doing like-minded things. And I think in the world of investing, where it is quite intimidating to the average individual, there's always that comfort level that comes with society kind of.
No, exactly. And I, honestly, like, it's a tough one to break into, to be honest, in terms of like mindset wise, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to Angel Spark. It's like, it's an obvious thing to say to invest in great young startup companies. How does one actually go about doing it? How do you even start?
Yeah.
How big should your check size be? What type of company should you do? Obviously, you don't want to lose all your money and, and sort of learn that way.
Yeah.
So therefore, for me, like things like a collective area or a collective group of people like an Angel Spark, for example, that are very smart and I'm sort of joining in, has turned out to be very, very cool.
Yeah.
I think public markets are a little bit different. I think there's so much information out there, and certainly in the social media age, you go on Twitter, you go on, CNBC and Bloomberg, and people are talking and debating and discussing.
Yeah.
And ultimately I guess it's about a calculated gamble, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so we talk about diversification a lot, and I think the idea is that you want to spread your risk as much as possible, right? And you want to take on that Warren Buffett approach, which
Yes.
is just long-term fundamental investing. And what we tell clients is by investing in funds or ETFs, as an example, you're just spreading out risk.
Yeah.
And the noise that comes with it in the markets, you look at the Trump or the US elections,
Yes.
you look at the wars that are going on, and a lot of that creates volatility in the markets and panic, but then the fundamentals don't change, right? As in you're investing in the Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons, etc., and spreading risk and holding assets that are income generating for the long term, right?
Yeah, I think for me, to be a bit controversial, I think there's like a complexity added on top of that, if you ask me honestly.
Yeah.
So for example, once again, I love social media and memes. I think there's a meme about people throwing their economics books in the bin, because who would have thought in 2007 quantitative easing would be a thing and a regular thing? Who would have thought interest rates would be at record lows for such a long period of time? Who would, like, it's such a complex sort of thing that you got to think about. So it's not even about just analyzing a company.
Yeah.
It's about a macro trend of what is happening in the world, financially as well. Central banks, how are they reacting? COVID, like how do you factor in COVID?
Yeah.
Like it's such a complicated thing to navigate.
Yeah.
When COVID was happening, I don't know if you remember, in the first 2 or 3 months, I mean, the market started tanking because everyone's like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And then, like, what does it mean? Like, you don't actually know the answer, but you're sort of, it's
right?
absolute uncertainty.
Yeah.
Everything was cratering, and now you look back on various stock prices. My brother did this last night over dinner with me. We were looking at stock prices from 2020 to now, and it's just like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
The
recovery was within months, right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't think I remember, during my time in the bank, clients were panicking. Markets were down, 30%. And I think what my focus was to remind them that, okay, there's a long-term plan in place. And these companies that aren't going to disappear overnight, and just stay the course. And then, within months, markets recovered and then did exceptionally well. I think the problem is you had clients that would sell no matter what because of just, uncertainty creates panic. Unfortunately, those are the ones that end up realizing a big loss, right? And it becomes very hard to recover from that mentally, psychology, and do these clients ever invest again? And the answer is probably no, right? But it seems like your brother is someone who follows a very much fundamental approach.
Yes.
Do you know what strategy? Does he have a specific strategy?
So I think, talking about my brother, I mean, he doesn't trade sort of actively, obviously working at a bank, etc. But I think from his perspective, he's very much, I call him like a Warren Buffett disciple.
Yeah.
I think he probably calls himself that as well.
Sure.
So very much long-term, understanding good value, looking for trends as well.
Sure.
I think he was telling me he bought hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing this, but the Facebook's, stock sort of lower than the IPO price, let's call it.
Okay.
So he's like multiple X'd up in terms of things like Meta, because he saw the general trend of what was happening in that space, for example.
Very nice.
I think it's very much like a long-term, but for me, you're trusting central governments as well.
Yeah.
Like, what should happen when COVID happens in terms of the financial markets should be a bit of a meltdown. What should happen in 2008 when the financial crisis happens? Honestly, a bit of a meltdown. Companies should fail.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk about economics 101,
Sure.
In reality, what happens? Companies are too big to fail. Central governments have to jump in. There's a coordinated approach to how these things are managed, and the world is stabilized. I guess the question then is, like, if you trust bodies to stabilize and keep things as status quo as possible, positively, then it's a no-brainer to think about things from a Warren Buffett perspective, 5, 10 years, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, makes sense. So if I ask you, what is financial planning?
Yeah.
And thinking about your long-term goals, retirement plan, or just generating passive income, what does that mean to you? So, like, how have you thought about that for your future?
Yeah, good question. I'd say not in massive amounts of detail yet. So I think it's an area that I'll definitely start focusing on a bit more.
Sure.
I know a lot of my friends have started thinking about this, more coherently as well.
Yeah.
Would it be nice to have some passive income? Would it be nice to be financially secure? I mean, I'm just about to turn 40 next year or so. So I think now's the time when I can sort of take a step back and be a bit more philosophical about life, and also a bit more practical about life. To be blunt, I think when you're in your early 20s, I say all the way up to until about maybe 30, 35, it's like any advice I give to people that I mentor,
Yeah.
it's like, put your blinkers on and just be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no substitute for being amazing at what you do professionally.
Absolutely.
After that,
yeah.
you can start thinking about success. What are you trying to do? My quality of life, blah, 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 blah. Once again, a bit of a controversial opinion to say, because even these days, 25-year-olds want to run massive projects and programs. 23-year-olds want quality of life and health. It's like, at 23, I did not think about any of this.
Yeah.
I put my hand up for any project that came through the door.
Yeah.
Enthusiastically. I'm happy to shadow. Can I just join to write minutes? I'm happy to just get involved to see how you guys do stuff. That's genuinely what I believe in. But I think now is sort of when I start thinking about sort of more future planning. And once again, I think a bit of a cliche, but obviously being diverse in terms of types of assets, geographies, different industries as well. Like, there's always this sort of age-old debate around sort of old school industries versus sort of new cutting-edge industries. Are robots going to be a thing in 2040? Are we going to have a robot each?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe there's a platform that someone's going to build in 5 years' time that it's like an app store for robots, and you plug and play, and the robot learns to do your dishes for you, and that's how you do it. So, I mean, stuff like that is obviously very interesting, but obviously that's a risk as well.
Sure.
Might not happen, but I personally think it probably will.
Yeah. No, certainly. Okay. And for what is, when we talk about retirement or financial independence, do you have a set goal? Is like, okay, by 50, I want to be financially free where I can do just pure passion projects? Or are you someone who, even when I'm 60, 65, 70, I want to just put my head down and keep working?
Yeah. No, good question. I think I've started obviously doing a bunch of investment. I started thinking about advising. I've started doing and started thinking about entrepreneurship in the future. I think Dubai does this to you, by the way. Like, I feel like everyone's got a side hustle going on, or certainly a side plan going on. Yeah. So would I ultimately like to flesh something out? Probably, maybe. I'm one of those people that I don't give myself like very hard, sort of deep targets. It's more sort of general flow. Let's see what works. I'm lucky enough to be able to live life where I live it on my terms. Even the work that I do, and it sounds a bit weird to say, like the last 3 to 4 roles that I've done in my corporate life have been pretty big roles. But the thing is, I jump out of bed every morning and I love what I do. If people talk about what's the culture like, well, I'm like, if it's rubbish, then it's our fault, because we are the culture. Yeah. So I'm definitely someone that's very passionate about what I do. How that manifests itself in the future, I'm yet to figure out. To be blunt, I think I'm pretty decent at the corporate world. Yeah. So I keep getting drawn back in. But in the future, do I think I can do more advisory work, investment work, maybe start a company or two? I mean, that's definitely food for thought.
Yeah. So if you were to start a company, any ideas already?
Yeah, I mean, once again, macro trends. So the biotech space is an area that I'm massively focused.
That's something your family is
absolutely
involved in some degree, right?
Absolutely. So we've done a private deal. Once again, I'm happy to mention it.
Sure.
So Halo Therapeutics is a UK-based biotech firm, which we've invested in as an organization. Actually, co-led a consortium of investors into that company. But yeah, look, do I think people want to be healthier, happier, mentally, physically, emotionally, philosophically, I say spiritually as well? Like, absolutely, yes. Yeah. Do I think the world has changed dramatically? Probably more than we realized since COVID. I think the answer is yes. The amount of friends and people that I've met recently who think of in these terms post-COVID, who had just not thought this way. So like, I would speak to friends and have coffees with them, and they would talk to me about what I'm talking about. I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this. Like, you were like this corporate titan beast. You want to have the biggest career, and it's all about money and success. And now you're talking about my family and what's important to me, my mental health and all this type of thing. So I think biotech space is definitely an area I think we can definitely focus on. My dad's a bit of a legend in the field. So, let's see how we can do something potentially together. Look, fintech, technology. I mean, as I said before at the beginning, I'm a bit of a geek at heart, and I taught myself programming. So I'm really into technology in the future and robots and robotics and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah. But I'm also like pretty old school. Like I'm one of those people. I famously say, car companies, new car companies, don't not build a car because a car company exists. Like even if a marketplace is crowded or an industry is crowded, you can enter it and be better. Like why not?
Yeah.
And I definitely believe in that as well.
Yeah, I think especially if you take on a client-centric approach and you understand that there's a problem that can be solved, then regardless of how much competition there is, why not go in and try and disrupt it?
Absolutely.
You know?
I think just being amazing is very, very important. And it sounds a bit cliche once again, but how many people make smartphones, but why do Apple outsell potentially, certainly from a dollar perspective in terms of smartphones? It's because everything's beautiful. Everything just works. And I guess non-Apple fans will probably scoff at me for saying this, but they hopefully won't deny the fact that the messaging, the storytelling, everything's just beautiful, seamless. It just works. Big luxury brands, it's just perfection.
Sure.
So I think there is this craving for simplicity and perfection as well. In any industry, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the word being amazing, the phrase. So what is being amazing? Like, how does one be amazing from your perspective or your experience, and some tips around it?
Yeah, sure. Do you mean as a person or as a brand or
as an individual?
As an individual,
to build themselves in this world, build their wealth. How would you advise on that?
It's a very deep question. Very deep question. It's going to turn into like a philosophy talk.
There you go. Masters of philosophy.
Masters of philosophy. Absolutely. Look, I think one thing that is unrivaled is being passionate about what you do and what you believe in, and being able to execute that in your life.
Yeah.
Too many people I've met don't like an aspect of their life, professionally, whatever it may be. I'm a bit more blunt and hardcore. Life is about choices.
Sure.
So, and I don't know, it's easy to say. I think as humans, we're lucky enough to be born in this era where the world is so small. Look, when I moved to India when I was a teenager, there was no YouTube, there was no Spotify. We barely got to listen to hip hop music, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And it was happening, it was coming on TV like once, 1 hour a week, I think it was, or something along those lines. And obviously we love that magical hour of hip hop music, Football, we used to get the football matches, but there was no like non-stop analysis like you have nowadays. And now you could live in any part of the world and you have YouTube and Spotify and this and the internet and social media, like everyone's always connected to everyone, to be blunt. Look, I think having a bit of charisma about you and being a nice person, I think is actually unrivaled. I joke about this, but I'm semi-serious when I sort of mentor people. Being liked is actually an underrated quality. Professionally, in your personal life, but especially professionally, right? And as an entrepreneur or as a corporate professional, you could be the smartest person on the planet, but if people don't like working with you, or you make life difficult, or you have a massive ego about you, or you're arrogant, you're going to get less done. Simple. And by the way, from my perspective, why would you not just be nice? I don't understand this philosophy of like trying to, climb a ladder, pulling the ladder up behind you, or elbowing people out of the way. I'm not about that. If you're amazing, I want you to be amazing. Like when I've hired people in my team, I want to hire people that are way smarter than me. That might be junior, by the way, but way smarter than me. And my team meetings, I'm saying, you guys need to take me out. Like you are smarter than me. Because when you build that sort of camaraderie between other humans that are on the same quest and of the same mindset and have the same values, life just becomes amazing. Life becomes happy. Have fun along the way. If you hate your job so much, like think about a different career, make an effort, network, meet people. Even then, like the grass is not always greener, to be honest. But you can't just sit there in the corner going, my life's a bit, mundane and I'm relaxed about it. We'll do something about it, or at least explore.
So no, it makes sense. And when you joined the corporates, have you ever entered a culture that doesn't sit well with you? And what have you done to change it? What's the process been like when rebuilding a team?
Absolutely. Look, I think the corporate world is very broad. It's offered lots of different people, different mindsets, different cultures within the organization as well, depending on the industry as well, right? So I wouldn't say I've gone in and had a shocking experience. I wouldn't say that, to be honest. Have I gone into organizations where they're expecting me to be the change? Yes, absolutely. And once again, it depends on the organization and depends on the culture and the geography as well. Would I live my professional life and do my day-to-day professional life differently in Dubai than I do in Toronto, than I do in London? 100% yes. Look, I think once again, back to the point around being transparent, having strong communication, explaining to people what you're trying to achieve, but being a leader from the front. I think, I don't like sitting in an ivory tower telling people, teams what to do, what processes to do. Like, I'll do it myself. I'll show you how to do it. This is the standard. And if you lead from the front, and my analogy of like a sports team, like if you're a captain, act like a captain. Don't just shout at all the players. Like, be an amazing player on the pitch. Saying this is how we need to do it, guys. This is the standard. And honestly, I think this is what great captains have done in the past, and that's why they're sort of so revered.
So how do you do that when you have teams all over the world, though? Right, like is it...
absolutely absolutely fascinating. Honestly, like I don't think it's a secret sauce. I think building deep, meaningful relationships is unrivaled. Like I was in London recently, met my colleagues at the company I work for at the moment. One thing they said was like, you're so different in person than you are on meetings and stuff. I like to bring quite a casual approach to things as well. I don't think anything is that serious. At the moment, my key stakeholders are all sort of C-suite executives, literally CEOs of the organization internally. So there's like an innate crazy amount of pressure that comes with that, which I respect and agree. So I'm not constantly trying to understand or belittle decisions that are being made or what they're thinking or how they're thinking. Like, I would not want to be in that hot seat. It's a very, very, very tough job. So having empathy with people that are very, very senior as well as junior is something that I think is a skill set that one needs to have. I think it's fashionable to have empathy with junior folks. It's actually not fashionable to have empathy with senior folks. And that's one thing that I really do genuinely. And I've been lucky enough to work with such senior executives for most of my career. So much so that they've actually become my friends. But I see them at the most vulnerable, or we're actually genuine friends, or we can talk in confidence around things that they're thinking about and figuring it out as well. I think as humans, we're figuring it out. Even CEOs, they're figuring it out, to be blunt.
When you're working closely with CEOs, what are some of the characteristics that you see make them successful?
Actually quite simplistic. So I think they love simplicity. That's one thing that I love to bring to the table. I think they really admire sort of resilience as well. So something's not right, something can go wrong. That is going to happen in any organization, whether you're a small company or a large company. It's about how you adapt and react to that. And I think CEOs like smart people around them to be able to have in the trenches with them, let's call it, that can help them make decisions as well. Everything is very nimble and fluid in the corporate world, right? And once again, in any business world, you've got to make decisions sometimes quite quickly. Some decisions can take a bit of time. Some decisions are a no-brainer. Some decisions, you need lots of analysis. So if you have strong people around you that can help you navigate that and triage that, then for me, that's what I've tried to do in my career, and trying to be indispensable for senior leaders to help them make decisions. Because ultimately they'll trust someone like me. I don't have any vested interest per se, except success. And if you bring a raw, genuine passion or authenticity to the table, I think people see through that very quickly, whether it's in your personal life, professional life, networking life, whatever life you want to talk about.
No, very interesting. And I want to loop back into the family a bit. Because what you said is you guys are very close when it comes to finances. So how do you manage that from... So let's talk about the emotions, right? If you have an idea and your brother has an idea or the father has an idea, do you guys sit together and like almost like a boardroom and share ideas and come up with like a consensus? Or talk me through that.
Absolutely. So no, that's actually a fascinating point. Look, when I joined Goldman Sachs, I feel like I was a bit like a duck to water because it's such a consensus-driven culture there. When we were growing up, my brother and myself, my family have always had this consensus level approach to things. even to this day, we have a weekly family meeting, a family call.
Wow.
Where everyone, and everyone's around the world, whatever, flying around the world. Nice. Everyone dials into the call, typically on the weekend, like on a Sunday, for example.
Yeah.
And we share perspectives of what's been happening in our lives to make sure that, we're not missing anything. It's sort of a bit of an admin update, to be honest.
Okay.
And then we talk about strategy and plans, etc. as well. My brother and my dad, etc. We spend a lot of time together as well. I joke about it calling, the Barot family offsite.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time together because creativity happens when you're in and amongst each other.
Sure.
You have random ideas, crazy idea, but what if I move to Dubai? Well, here are the pros and cons. Let's think about it. Like, next thing you know, I'm in Dubai.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons of it? Getting perspectives from my brother, from my dad, or whoever else it may be, I think is a very unique thing. When it comes to things like family sort of investments and that type of thing, absolutely. I think we all bring a different perspective. Like my dad's very well networked, very well regarded in the biotech and the medical space.
Yeah.
My brother, obviously extremely intelligent, very, very smart, knows macro trends, works at a big investment bank, and little old me trying to bring something to the table somehow. No, but genuinely, I get perspectives as well. I'm always a curious learner, etc. So, for example, have we had a conversation previously, we should start investing in small startup companies in the region? I think Dubai is a great place to do it because I think India is a fascinating place because we debate, discuss it, pros and cons, logistically, is it possible? And then we ultimately execute. So,
sure. And collectively, is there an objective, right? As in, okay, you guys come together. Is there the objective of this is the return we need to make per year, and we'll diversify the wealth accordingly? Or is it, what is the
good question.
consensus?
So I think from my perspective, and I guess the family's perspective, I think we're at very early stages of all of this. This is why Volt is such an exciting, interesting sort of platform for us, and sort of something that we are curious about.
Yeah.
Do we have, once again, define set goals per se? Not really.
Okay.
I think a year or two of experimenting, to be blunt, is kind of the vision that we're going to probably be taking.
Yeah.
And then once we understand the world a bit better, once we understand, what good looks like, let's call it, then we can start defining what good is.
Yeah.
But also what motivates us and drives us in life.
Yeah.
So let me be blunt. If the answer is, I don't know, a 20% return on investment is what you should be aiming for, and that's what you need to do, and we're constantly hitting 18%, for that 2%, if we need to fly around the world and be way more aggressive and blah, blah, I don't know if we really want to do that.
Sure.
So I think we're lucky enough to be able to be in a position where we can sort of be quite nimble, be quite agile, but do it on our terms. That's kind of the thinking there.
And have you thought about officially structuring something? You said that you're looking at the whole family office potentially in the UAE. What does that mean? Just to someone that
good question. I think we're curious about the idea.
Yeah.
I think the pros and cons are still being weighed out.
Yeah.
Having an entity that can do all of this for us versus, frankly, doing it more individualistically, where we sort of co-invest together.
Yeah.
And the pros and cons of that is something that we are exploring.
Yeah.
I know there's been a big drive in the world generally, I suppose, where a lot of family offices have been being formed.
Yeah.
And using a vehicle, to use that as an investment going forwards as well.
Yeah. Especially, I think ADGM, DIFC have been
100%.
pretty progressive around family office structures. And you're seeing like European families come over, US to set up here, right? Obviously, there's a lot of benefits from tax, etc. Yeah. So that's super interesting. And do you feel like your part in that would be more, again, just pure private markets, or is it more on the legal, administrative, the tax implication? Like, where do you fit in this?
Yeah, great question. So I guess I'm at the cutting edge of it, from a family perspective, let's call it. CEO probably, and my brother would be CFO,
Nice.
but we'd be co-founders.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure I'm being
Barot,
exactly. Yeah. So not that one's ahead of the other.
Yeah.
I think once again we bring different qualities to the table, and I think when we were growing up, it was really weird because me and my brother are so different, and we're so like you wouldn't believe we're brothers, I guess, from a personality perspective or an approach to life perspective. But what is positive is we complement each other so well. And then, ultimately, I mean, what that looks like, it's a structure where I can sort of bring corporate strategy. Here's what I think we should do. Balancing between public markets versus private markets. Is it the right thing to do? Look, the world is such an unknown place at the moment, geopolitically and just financial markets wise as well. I think it's about being nimble enough to have the, as we used to call it at Goldman's, intellectual horsepower to react. As simple as that, really.
Yeah. No, it's, at Volt, what we're doing at the moment is we've seen in a few use cases where a lot of families that have built considerable amount of wealth, they're now in that crossroad of how to structure it better, how to create a proper policy and an entity that can then help for succession, right? But there's a big education gap. I think what we've seen in the US and Europe is much more mature than here, but it's shifting, right? And our support is providing that advice on how to set up a family office, the investor policy statement, hiring. Do you hire like an administrator, a tax consultant, and just formalizing it better, right, for the long term.
Yeah, look, 100%. I think one thing that I found as well, to be blunt, even especially in Dubai, is finding very sort of reliable partners along for your journey. This is why I resonated with Volt Wealth so much, and certainly yourself. And obviously we're good friends now. Having sort of reliable partners that give you good advice, even on an approach perspective, even on what is happening in the market perspective, is actually very, very important. Is it hard to get an opinion? Absolutely not. You can get 1,001 opinions every day of the week. What's important is filtering out the opinions, understanding the sources of the opinions, understanding what drives these opinions, the track record, the future projections, the alignment, the vibe, like all these little things matter so much. And that's why, back to my point about networking, thinking, exploring, resonating, having partners like Volt Wealth on board, for example, by your side is such an important thing for me. Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure, especially because now I know you on a deeper level now. Yes. I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
We thank you and we'll do this again soon.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, Sami, for having me on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.